In solo leveling, after finally entering the S-rank gate in Japan, Drippy Woo is surprised since a monster started laughing obnoxiously as it welcomes the Shadow Monarch. Drippy Woo is confused, asking himself if he was the boss, as it tells him to free him, saying that he knows what the rulers were planning, so he must inform the other monarchs. Rizzy Woo asks if those so-called rulers do this to him, which he responds saying they were trying to use him as a stepping stone to lay the groundwork for the real war that is to come. Drip Woo thinks to himself, saying that every time he's tried to get a beast with intelligence to explain its origin, they were unable to give him an answer, asking him who these rulers he spoke of are. He responds saying that they are the ancient enemies of the monarchs, which lead to him thinking if that meant that they were his enemies as well. Drippy Woo says that if they had him chained up like this, does that mean, yes, I too am a monarch, he responded. The giant said that the monarchs and rulers are probably after him, saying that since he doesn't have the strength to face all of them, he would need allies to fight back, telling him to release him, and he would help him in his battles. Riz Woo looks dead serious, saying, "A monster helping a human? Do you expect me to believe that?" The giant responded saying that he would make him believe it, which shocked Drippy Woo, as the giant started chanting in monster language, which made him go on the defense, not knowing what's to come. The system panel informs him that the King of Giants, monarch of the beginning Legia, had used the skill Oath of Faith, which if accepted, both the caster and acceptant wouldn't be able to lie to each other. Drippy Woo thinks long and hard if he should accept this suspicious spell, but ends up accepting it anyways, activating the skill. The King of Giants said it again, "Release me, and I shall help you." Drip Woo responded saying, "All right, I completely trust," but couldn't say another word, which Legia explained that that was the Oath of Faith, meaning it was impossible for him to lie. Rizzy Woo asks why he could communicate freely unlike other creatures. He responds confused as to what he meant by that, which he clarifies that he's talking about the monsters coming out of the gates. The giant realizes what he's talking about, calling them the residents of chaos. He responded saying he would ask him something instead. How could he consider that the residents of chaos are on the same level of comparison to a monarch that rules them? He then goes to explain that the monsters that come out of the gates, also known as residents of chaos, are all stragglers that have been captured by the rulers, and since they have been captured for an eternity, it's only normal for their consciousness to have been eroded. But he's a king unlike them, so he has maintained rationality, saying that he's been waiting all these countless years for the day he would finally be set free. Drippy Woo asks if the ruler's army he was talking about were the soldiers with silver armor and wings. He confirms it, saying that they were indeed the armies of the rulers. Drip Woo asked why exactly the rulers kept on sending monsters, no demons, to their planet. The giant responds, explaining that they were preparing for war and wanted to turn his world into the battlefield of said war to fight against the monarchs. Drip Woo, still confused, asks, why would sending monsters turn the earth into a battlefield? The giant responds, saying it's simple, explaining that they were planning on injecting magic energy into his world, and this revelation shocked Drippy Woo. The monsters that emerged from the gates were considered disasters, while the magic energy that came from it was considered a blessing. This was something every hunter and civilian thought, since magic stones and magic gems were objects that hold magical energy, making it the current greatest source of energy in the world. But all along, they were actually just a stepping stool to build the foundation for war. Legia says that there's no better way to plant a power that does not exist than to use the blood of those who possess that power. That is why the rulers decided to use the hostages they captured, making the magical energy become increasingly concentrated, using the demon's blood that has been spilled at the feet of the soldiers. Magic energy continues to strengthen the world, to create a world that doesn't disintegrate from the shock of war. Drippy Woo asks if by war did he mean. Legia confirms it, saying the rematch between the monarchs and the rulers would take place in his world, turning it into a burning hell, and it will happen sooner than he would have thought. He explained that there wasn't much time left, since neither the rulers or the monarchs would stand still after realizing that both of them had made contact, and it's possible that the rulers are already on the move. Drizzy Woo asked why he kept trying to make it sound like they're after him, which the giant responded saying that he really didn't know anything after all, since the power he possesses is not truly his own, and even the fact that he can use that power means that the original Shadow Monarch had betrayed the rulers, meaning that he has become the enemy of both the rulers and monarchs alike. The giant swears on his dead granny that he would remain by his side and fight alongside him, asking him to help him in his current predicament. Drippy Woo thinks for a second and says that if he truly wanted to help him, then it would just be easier for him to turn him into a shadow soldier. The giant gets shocked after noticing a familiar presence, saying that for a second, he saw a glimpse of him. He then goes on to explain that both rulers and monarchs are bound to spiritual forms, meaning that when they die, they cannot become his shadows. He asks if that was enough of an explanation for him to finally help him. Drippy Woo pulls out his dagger, saying he finally understood the situation now, but there's something that feels off about this, like there's something he's missing. He pleads with him to free him from his chains when Drippy Woo asks if he meant what he said, that he would be by his side. The giant responds saying, "Of course." And as Rizzy Woo cuts down one of the chains, the giant said, "If you help me, I will help you," saying that this was an absolute deal between monarchs. After the giant gets its right hand freed from the chains, he thought about how the glimpse he saw was just his imagination. That is when Drippy Woo prepared to ask another question. "Are you on the side of the humans?" The giant refused to reply to this question, so he looks at him dead in the fucking eyes, asking, "Why are you silent?" and asks him if it was because of the oath of faith, which made it impossible for him to lie. Drippy Woo notices the crystal on the giant's nape, saying that he knows that as long as it exists, he as well must be hearing the words of the rulers, which tell him to kill humans just like every other monster. The giant grits its teeth as he launches a surprise attack towards Jinwoo, though he manages to dodge his blow with minimal difficulty as he says, "The deal's off," stabbing the giant directly in the chest, saying that it was too dangerous to let him live since he could become a calamity to the world. On the brink of death, the giant responds, saying that he was mistaken. "The calamity is not me, it's you," and attempts to launch another attack, but he counters it, punching the living granny out of him. The giant coughs up blood and attempts to claw him again, but misses yet again, giving Papa Woo the opportunity to counteract by punching him right in the chest, making him spew even more blood. As the bloodied giant sits on the floor, he explains that as the battles between the inhabitants of his world and the residents of chaos become more frequent, the faster his world would become an increasingly fierce war zone, saying that he prays that everything he holds dear and protects would turn into ash burned by the karma of war. Drippy Woo responds, saying that things wouldn't go as he hopes, decapitating the giant in an instant with the system panel reading, "You have defeated the dungeon boss, Legia, one of the 9 original monarchs." The system starts calculating his experience, saying that it might take some time since the amount he gained was enormous. Drippy Woo says it's a shame he didn't manage to get any shadow soldiers, but at least he'll take that as a souvenir. As the giant's body disappears, the system's XP calculation finishes, leveling him up 8 entire levels, now making him level 122. At the same time, in an estate in America, a helicopter lands as the national level hunter Christopher Reed says he wasn't expecting anyone today, welcoming both the vice director and Ms. Selner. The vice director says he has something very important to discuss with him, asking if he could tell everyone to leave. Christopher tells his assistant to not let anyone near his room until those 2 people leave, which she accepts his order like a good slave. Christopher asks what brought them here, and if it is about some S-rank gate that has appeared somewhere in the east, then he ain't going. Ms. Selner responds, saying that that wasn't the case and that there's a more serious problem. Christopher is confused, asking what could be more serious than an S-rank gate, which she responds, saying, "You may be murdered in the future."